It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. It's still search and rescue. The sounds heard today from beneath the Atlantic in the hunt for the missing Titan. Coast Guards say planes, ships and underwater vehicles are deployed in the region as we hear what it's like to travel in the submersible 2 miles down.
You cannot stand, you cannot stay on your knees, you only sit 10.5 hours in the same situation.
Also tonight, stubbornly high inflation and a decades-high level of public debt. The grim backdrop for the economy as the Bank of England decides whether to raise rates again. A victim of everything, of beatings and fear, the Yazidi woman kept as a slave who finally saw her tormentor jailed. Bringing Caribbean culinary culture to Britain on the eve of the Windrush anniversary, we look at how it changed what we eat. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. A very good evening. Sounds, noises, even what one expert described as banging has been heard beneath the Atlantic in the multinational search for the missing Titan submersible. 2 underwater vehicles are already involved. More are due to arrive overnight. They are part of what the US Coast Guard insists is still a search and rescue mission. The 5 passengers on the submersible are thought to have only around 14 hours of oxygen left. Tonight, our correspondents are live in both Boston and Newfoundland, and we'll look at how what would be a world record-breaking rescue could possibly be carried out. Our first report comes from there, and our international correspondent, John Sparks.
It is vast and frequently hostile, a friend and adversary to everyone on this island.
Look at the iceberg.
No one in Newfoundland underestimates the task now faced by search and rescue teams as they attempt to locate the missing submersible. A Canadian patrol plane has picked up sounds in the search area. These noises registered on sonar buoys. But at the moment, the experts haven't been able to identify them. Yet, it has provided a glimmer of hope as rescue teams move specialist equipment into the area. A sophisticated deep-sea submersible provided by the US Navy loaded onto this ship overnight. It will join more than a dozen ships and submersibles scouring the area, with the operator of the missing vessel's supply ship, the Polar Prince, saying they're still optimistic.
The Polar Prince lost contact with the submersible on Sunday morning. I mean, realistically, how optimistic are you that you will find the submersible and rescue the men on it?
The equipment that's been mobilized for this is the finest in the world, the most capable in the world. We have to hold out hope. I think, as you're aware, there's still life support available on the submersible, and we'll continue to hold out hope until the very end.
If the 5 men on Titan are still alive, their fate may rest in the hands of crew member Paul-Henri Najolet. A highly experienced mariner, he's visited the wreck of the Titanic some 35 times, and we tracked down a man who knows him well. Jose da Silva captained the supply ship on one of his missions.
He's very experienced.
Da Silva says he's unflappable. Once his submersible got stuck on the Titanic itself.
One time the rope was stuck in a Titanic piece, and we had to do a lot of maneuvers to be able to bring the rope back to onboard ship.
A German adventurer who made the same trip in Titan in 2021 told Sky News he thought the voyage was safe, but it wasn't a pleasant experience.
You cannot stand, you cannot stay on your knees, you only sit 10.5 hours in the same situation.
The North Atlantic can be a formidable foe. The depths and tides frighten most Newfoundlanders. This is a challenging place to conduct a rescue operation. It was when the Titanic sank, and it still is now. One official told us it's like looking for a needle in a moving haystack. If the submersible is intact, they won't have much oxygen left. But nobody on this island is giving up. John Sparks, Sky News, St John's, Newfoundland.
A wide range of ships, aircraft and underwater craft have been deployed to the North Atlantic. So how might they find the Titan? And if they did, how might its passengers be freed? Sky's Adele Robinson has been examining the details behind a complex operation.
This is a race against time. We know that air supplies in Titan will run out Thursday morning. So how are rescuers trying to find it? Well, if the submersible's intact, it could be floating on the surface or resting on the bottom of the ocean. That's 3,750 metres down. Ships and planes have been searching since Monday. More specialist equipment is on its way, including what are known as sono buoys. Below 1,000 metres, it's pitch black, so the search is relying on sound in water. Sono buoys, normally used for hunting enemy submarines, work by either listening for sounds in water or by sending out pings and building up a sort of picture through the returning echo. Sounds were picked up by a buoy on Tuesday, but experts say this could just be debris moving inside the Titanic wreck. So if Titan is found, then how could it be reached? Any successful rescue would be a world first. The deepest ever rescue of humans was the Pisces 3 off the coast of Ireland in 1973. But that was at just 487 metres. The Titanic is over 7 times deeper. Another challenge: normal submarine rescue tech can't be used. The Titan has no docking mechanism like a military submarine, and even NATO's systems only operate down to about 1,000 metres. But some positive news: unmanned, remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, are on site, and more capable ones are on their way, which can descend to over 6,000 metres. The American Curve 21 and French Victor 6000 both have robotic arms that could attach cables to the submersible. And the American FADOS system, essentially a winch and a cable long enough to pull Titan to the surface. That actually successfully salvaged a helicopter from a depth of over 5,800 metres in 2021. But even with this kit, experts are cautious about a successful rescue.
We've reached the critical point in the operation. Time is running out really fast now. But we do have a valid solution in case Titan is found in the timescale. The Americans have brought heavy equipment in, but that equipment has to be brought forward to the ships that are going to operate it, fitted, and these vehicles have to descend to these extreme depths. That means that everything has to go right the first time. There's no second chance for this, and the weather also has to be near perfect.
All hope now lies in the coordination of world-class expertise and equipment currently converging on that search area in the North Atlantic.
Adele Robinson there. Well, let's speak now to our correspondents in Boston and St John's. First, to our US correspondent, James Matthews. And James, the message from there is definitely do not give up.
Yeah, hi, Sally. Yeah, the message is that hope prevails, although there is little to no hard fact, it seems, on which to base it. Efforts clearly are concentrated around these noises, heard yesterday and again this morning, described originally as banging half an hour apart. Now, this search team is being advised by a UK submariner, Lieutenant Commander Richard Cantaria from the Royal Navy. He will have told them that the submariner's distress call is 2 bangs, one at the top of the hour, one at the bottom. They bang at the top of the hour, allow searchers to go silent, switch off propellers and listen for the second bang that comes half an hour later. The Coast Guard gave a news conference today. They were still describing these noises as bangs, noises that really could be anything, but they were still calling it banging this afternoon. Although, to be fair to the Coast Guard spokesman, he didn't say he was aware of any half-hour gap in between. It's a situation where any glimmer of optimism finds a hefty counter in a job described by the search team as one of enormous complexity.
Absolutely, James, thank you. And to John Sparks now in Newfoundland, the port there in St John's. has quickly turned into a staging post for a multinational operation, John.
Yeah, it really has, Sally. And the people who are organising this rescue, they think they should have 10 vessels on the search area within the next 24 hours. They've already got some of these ROVs, these remotely operated vehicles, in the sea where they heard these sounds, and by tomorrow morning they should have several more, including a very sophisticated ROV that's been lent to them by the US military. It's this one that can plunge to depths of around 6 kilometres. So really it's quite remarkable. In the space of a couple of days, this operation has been able to assemble some really sophisticated kit. They've given themselves every opportunity to find these men, but they've got to do it quickly. We believe that the oxygen on this submersible, if it's still intact, is running out. So if they're going to do it, they really have to do it now.
OK, John Sparks and James Matthews, thank you both. Now, there may be little respite tomorrow for mortgage holders like Peter Leslie. He told us today that his repayments have risen by more than £600 since the Bank of England started raising interest rates. And the bank seems likely to increase that pain tomorrow after inflation again proved to be stubbornly high. Well, the rate of rising prices was expected to have fallen last month, but instead inflation stayed static at 8.7%. Core inflation, which strips out volatile factors such as energy and food, rose to 7.1%, up from 6.8% in April. And government borrowing led to UK debt hitting a 6-decade high. It's not been more than 100% of GDP since 1961. It all adds to the pressure on the Bank of England over interest rates, as our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, now reports.
At Leeds' Kirkgate Market, there's only one big topic of conversation these days: inflation. The rate at which prices are rising is taking its toll on businesses like this hair and beauty shop.
People are squeezing their budget because of the living cost, and footfall is not there, so our sales are getting down and down.
Neil, a greengrocer nearby, sees the hallmarks every day.
English peas, for instance, we've put them on today because it's the time of the year, but they're £5.50 a kilo, which is just ridiculous. We just had a lady pass us the cherries and put them back down again because they're too expensive.
There's all sorts of root causes for this inflation: high energy prices, the post-COVID bounce back. But for this food wholesaler in London, there's also a very UK-specific explanation.
Brexit has made a major impact, which is really underplayed deliberately by our government, but it's continuing to have a marked effect on the cost.
Put it all together and you begin to see why the UK has the highest inflation rate in the G7, a rate with serious economic consequences. The good news is that food price inflation now does look like it might have peaked. The bad news is, whether it's oranges or cauliflower, prices are still rising, just at a less fast rate. And the worry for the Bank of England's perspective is that it's not just this stuff, it's everything else, it's services, it's restaurants. Inflation is starting to look, that word they hate, sticky. And the stickier it is, the more they will feel they have to do about it. That spells higher interest rates. But even where they are right now, they're causing a real squeeze, with homeowners facing large increases in mortgage repayments.
It's gone from 1,087, I think 1,709 the last letter I got, my payments. And the way it's going, I predict it could probably be up to 19, £2 within the way that I'm looking within the next 3 months.
This is fast becoming the biggest political story in town, as was evident from Prime Minister's questions.
£2,900 extra. That's the cost to the average family of the Tory mortgage penalty. Now, he was warned by experts about this as long ago as autumn last year, but he either didn't get it, didn't believe it, or didn't care, because he certainly didn't do anything.
Perhaps the honourable gentleman could explain why interest rates are at similar levels in the United States, in Canada, in Australia and New Zealand.
Now all eyes on the Bank of England. Once upon a time, people thought interest rates would peak at 4.5%. But with the bank widely accused of being behind the curve on inflation, markets expect hike after hike after hike. Ed Conway, Sky News.
The Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee have to weigh up the different pressures that are feeding high inflation. Our business and economics correspondent, Gurpreet Narwan, has been untangling them.
Inflation really is the problem that won't quite go away. And you can see how sticky it is here. The blue line, we're over the hump, but it's not falling anywhere near as fast as policymakers would like. It stayed flat at 8.7% last month. That's considerably higher than the bank's 2% target. And look at this, before the lockdown, it's also a lot higher than the type of inflation we're used to in the UK. So we've got some way to go to get it back down. And when we're thinking about what's driving this persistent inflation, well, you can see that food and drink is easing off right at the bottom there, that red line. But prices here are still rising at an annual rate of 18%. So don't be fooled by that red bar. Meanwhile, at the top in the blue, it's leisure pursuits like eating out, recreation and culture that are now driving inflation. So even though prices are rising, people are still finding money to spend. And it's possibly why the Bank of England is worried about robust pay rises that workers in Britain have been securing. And this type of spending is becoming increasingly a problem. We will often hear that inflation is a global problem caused in part by factors out of our control, like the energy crisis. But if we strip away volatile items like food and energy out of the headline rate, we can see that underlying pressures, so that's the red line or core inflation in the UK, is rising. That's something our counterparts in Europe and the US are not grappling with. And all of this, it's uncomfortable for a government that's trying to figure out how it may tempt voters next year ahead of a general election. Government debt, as you can see here, as a proportion of GDP, is at its highest since the 1960s. And soaring interest rates make servicing that debt all the more painful. So it's a tough state of affairs for a country grappling with the cost of living crisis and a government that's been talking tough on inflation, but not yet delivering the desired results.
Gurpreet Narwan there. And with interest rates almost certain to rise further tomorrow, we'll be getting answers from the experts about the cost of living crisis. That's at 12:30 and 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon here on Sky News. And you can scan the QR code on the screen to send us your questions. We'd love to hear from you. A young woman held captive as a slave by a couple with the Islamic State received some semblance of justice today. One of her captors, a German woman, was sentenced to more than 9 years in jail after being tried for crimes against humanity and being an accessory to the genocide carried out against the Yazidi people. Naveen Al, speaking exclusively to Sky News, said she saw everything from beatings to fear, as our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunker, reports.
The German defendant, known as Nadine K, arrived in court covering her face from the cameras to hear the verdict at the end of this 6-month trial. Sat opposite her, just a few feet away, was Naveen Al, the young Yazidi woman who she kept as a slave for 5 years and whose evidence was crucial in convicting her. Nadine K went to Syria and joined Islamic State with her husband in 2014. He is now in prison in Syria. During her 5 years as an IS slave, Naveen, here on the left, was sexually assaulted, tortured, forced to work for the couple and pressed to convert to Islam, which she refused to do. She told her story exclusively to Sky News.
رجع بري أسهاتي مقرتن مش دقيقة بريدة از الحبسة دبهم هتاز درنا كتم هتاز نجهام با مالا باب خوني في خوي خداني تخدا أسهرة الحبسة دبهم بس بشتي أس شوي موي ماليش ده يعني روج بروج أس شبج متى هرجي أنا مخرب ترليتات وبخو أز تعلم عن دماء إسلاماتي يعني الديني بسلمانة هكا أز ديني خو بقورم.
Naveen was found in a camp in Syria by a Scottish filmmaker. He helped her escape back to Iraq. We spent time with Naveen and her family near their home in Iraq and showed her, for the first time, a video of the moment that she was finally safe.
بشتي هاتي داك عمي اشكر بيت مدامر داك خنتي جبرم تاكم نفشيبت نبست ونبروش دي متقول تايدما وزنزانم كاكين هافي ناس ببينم دي متقول سترسم الشاركة دي نبين تقول تماري تقول أكيد كان ها صعبة كان هافي ناس صعبة نها هادبو وزهقت من نادي.
Thousands of Yazidis are still missing, and many remain buried in mass graves. Naveen told us that justice today was justice for her and for all Yazidis who suffered because of Islamic State. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News.
The UK today pledged more than £2 billion in loan guarantees to help rebuilding in Ukraine. It and much, much more will be sorely needed. The recent destruction of the Kakhovka Dam is a stark example of the issues facing the country. In the past 2 weeks, the flooding along the Dnipro River has destroyed homes and farmland and contaminated supplies of drinking water. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, reports from Kherson.
2 weeks after the dam was blown, parts of Kherson are still underwater. Through flooded streets, we entered the worst affected area to join the region's governor and mayor. The task ahead, they say, is immense.
We need to clean everything and restore the hydroelectric station and give people back houses which they lost and give back their belongings.
The floodwaters reached everywhere here, even the high ground. Father Grigory showed us his flooded church that had been used to store aid supplies and house the homeless.
For 6 months they were bombing us. Every day they were shelling because we are on the front line. And after they now flooded us, we feel only cold towards them. And with that, I can't even call them people, because it isn't even true.
Some aid is getting in, but also getting bogged down. Most people seem to be fending for themselves. Vlad showed us what's left of his house. He spent the last 5 years doing it up. All of that undone in the flood. Somehow, he's still smiling.
Коньяк, водка. Есть такое выражение.
There is a saying that every evil will be punished. I believe they will be punished.
Across the river, behind his house, Russia's military isn't far away. It's only as the waters have gone down that the true extent of the devastation here is becoming clearer. Property after property completely wrecked, a thick layer of black sludge lifted onto the streets, and the air thick with the stench of sewage and fuel. And the clear-up operation here is being made even more complicated by the fact we're just over the river from Russian forward positions. The economic cost is incalculable. This was a print works, machines and supplies now comprehensively destroyed. It looks like a natural disaster, devastation on a massive scale. Ships lifted and dumped on dry land. But this was done deliberately by Russia. A conference in London to discuss rebuilding Ukraine after the war might seem premature from here. Either way, the bill has just gone up by billions. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Kherson.
Well, the Russian ambassador to the UK has today claimed that Ukraine was responsible for destroying the Kakhovka Dam. Andrei Kellin also told Sky News the UK is pursuing a militaristic agenda against Russia. In support of his claim over the dam, he provided what he said was written evidence.
If you are interested, I have specially prepared it in English. This is a list of strikes. It has 33 counts. About 300 missiles during this time has been launched, and they attained Kakhovka Dam. So finally...
But most experts say that missiles couldn't have caused the damage that was caused.
Most of those experts, they are sitting back in the rooms and just thinking out loud what they think. But these are facts.
But why would Ukraine want to destroy the dam? You were in control of the dam. You have the means to destroy that dam.
Yes, of course.
You have the motive to destroy that
We do not.
dam, and you have the opportunity to destroy that.
It's a year ago, one of the major generals of Ukraine has said that they are going to blow up the dam to prevent a Russian offensive. It has been published in the Washington Post, I'm not sure, in December last year.
Sky News understands the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is out of the running to become the next head of NATO. It's understood that America, NATO's most powerful member, instead wants the incumbent, Jens Stoltenberg, to remain in post until next year. 2 people are missing and 24 have been injured in a large explosion in central Paris. The cause of the blast has not been confirmed, but officials have said a gas explosion is one of the possible explanations. Police have arrested a man after 2 people were hurt in an incident at Central Middlesex Hospital in northwest London. Police said one of them has life-threatening injuries. Finally, dishes like jerk chicken are part of the country's cuisine now, and we have the Windrush generation to thank for them. Tomorrow marks the 75th anniversary of the arrival of the Empire Windrush, who left the Caribbean to start a new life in the UK. Our correspondent, Siobhan Freeman-Powell, has been looking at the culinary cultural impact.
Yams, mangoes and sweet potatoes, foreign foods that we take for granted. But this wouldn't have been the case 75 years ago, when people like Colin's dad were just starting to arrive.
We realised that we couldn't get our own produce. All that was available was short grain rice, and it wasn't very nice.
Using connections in Jamaica and money saved up from working in Nottingham coal mines, in 1955, his dad became one of the first to open up a Caribbean food shop in the Midlands. Challenges would have been transportation. He spent many hours on the road actually trying to get the things back to Nottingham, trying to get through with the banks to actually get finance and so forth to get started. That was not very easy. Tough but necessary, and now the industry is worth millions, but the cultural value, priceless.
I think that if it wasn't for the Caribbean supermarket, the market in general, or the 1 or 2 stallholders that sold plantain, yam and so on, we wouldn't be able to stay connected to our culture. And me, as a second generation, again, wouldn't know so much of where I'm from.
For the Windrush generation, accessing Caribbean produce wasn't just about having a taste of home. It was about preserving a culture, which eventually influenced Britain's. Wilfred is one of the UK's only commercial black farmers famous for producing British sausages with a Caribbean twist.
Everybody loves the sausage.
He's also a child of the Windrush generation.
I think it's very, very important, especially on something like the 75th anniversary of Windrush Day, to remind people that it was a very brave entrepreneurial thing to do. And I'm so grateful that my parents had that entrepreneurial gene in them. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing in front of you today.
Siobhan Freeman-Powell, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview, including this story on the front of the Daily Mail. Tories turn on bank over rates crisis. Certainly be talking about that rather a lot. And tonight we're joined by Associate Editor at the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine. See you after this short break. This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. The US Coast Guard, coordinating the search for the missing submersible in the Atlantic, has said underwater noises have been heard, but it's not known what they are. It's projecting the vessel's oxygen supply will run out at 12 tomorrow, UK time. The latest inflation figures show prices are rising faster than expected. Interest rates are expected to rise again tomorrow. And in an interview with Sky News, Russia's ambassador to the UK has accused Rishi Sunak of pursuing a militaristic agenda over the war in Ukraine. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. And tonight we're joined by Associate Editor at the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine. Good evening to you both. We'll be with you in just a moment, but first let's have a look at what's on some of those front pages. Their last hope. The Daily Star reports that there's just hours left to find the missing Titanic submersible as oxygen supply dwindles. Rescuers have promised not to give up hope of saving the 5 people on board the vessel. That story on the front page of the Metro too. The Daily Express reports saving the 5 people on board rests with a rescue robot being sent to the scene of the search. The Financial Times reports that the Bank of England is under pressure to raise interest rates by as much as 0.5 percentage point because of stubbornly high inflation. The expected rate rise is sparking fears of a recession. That's the front cover of the Eye. Tories turn on bank over rates crisis. That headline leads the Daily Mail tomorrow. The Daily Telegraph reports lung cancer tests will be offered to every ex-smoker to try and boost survival rates. Security guards on a Kenyan apple farm that supplies British supermarkets have been accused of brutally assaulting and killing people suspected of trespassing on the property. That exclusive story on the front of tomorrow's Guardian. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you're watching us. And we're joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Sarah Vine. Great to see you both. Thanks so much for joining us. And certainly inflation and interest rates are very much dominating many of the front pages. Sarah, to you first, if I may. Let's look at the front page of the Financial Times. Stubborn inflation piles pressure on Bank of England to take tough action is their headline. I mean, we've been talking about sticky inflation, haven't we? But it really does seem like it's stuck.
Very stuck. And of course, Rishi wants to get it down to 3% by the end of the year, which is looking increasingly unlikely, I suppose. But the main issue for most people will be interest rates because, we're a nation of homeowners and a lot of people, will have borrowed. Because interest rates have been artificially low for so long, they probably borrowed more than they can really afford. And bought houses that were in themselves inflated in price because of the low interest rates. So it's a sort of pincer movement. It's a real horror show for homeowners. And it's a really difficult situation for the Conservative Party because they are the party of home ownership. That's their traditional space in the sort of political spectrum. And if you start to mess with people's houses, I mean, for most people, their home is their nest egg. It's the only real chance they have of ever really making any money, saving anything. And now you're just undermining all of that. So Rishi's in a very difficult position. He's been very clear. He's going to keep trying to get these rates, this inflation down, and that is going to have to mean more interest rate rises.
Yeah, it certainly feels that that's what we're looking at tomorrow, Kevin. I mean, it's almost guaranteed, isn't it, that the Bank of England is going to raise interest rates again tomorrow. The question is, by how much?
No, absolutely. The decision will have been taken. They'll have had an early sight of the inflation data, made their decision. And I think it's noon tomorrow we'll get the bad news. And of course, the FT is talking about a 0.5% rise. Rises used to be 0.25, but going up 0.5%, that would be to 5%. December 2021, that's just 19 months ago, the rate was 0.1%. So it's absolutely shot up. And as Sarah says, it's crucifying people with mortgages who have to remortgage. Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's Questions had a very effective attack on Sunak by talking about a £2,900 Tory mortgage penalty. That's the average figure the resolution believes families will have to pay, households will have to pay extra. And he promised to get inflation down, and it's stuck at 8.7%. When I saw the figure this morning, I thought, am I reading this correctly? Because it was forecast to fall, but it's been forecast to fall before, and it's actually gone up. This time it didn't fall. So yes, it's a huge political problem now for the UK Conservative government, but more importantly, it is a massive financial headache for millions of families.
Yeah, absolutely. The front page of the Eye, Sarah, certainly is predicting the possibility of a recession. Mortgage pain deepens as new rate rise sparks recession fears, talking about how the base rate may now hit 6% next year. And certainly this is just going to mean a lot of pain for homeowners. 400,000 people are going to have to renew their mortgages between July and September.
And also you've got people who will have paid very high prices for their houses, and and of course the housing market will, I mean, some people are saying that it could drop by as much as 30% in some places. So, you could be sitting on a house. This just brings back memories of the 90s, that disastrous, very high interest rates and negative equity and people having their homes repossessed. Only in a funny kind of a way, it's worse now, because back then we hadn't had this long period of very low interest rates, which had artificially inflated the housing market and made people stretch themselves beyond their natural capacity to buy. And we've also got another problem, which is the rental market is very, very expensive at the moment. So people could be coming out of their homes and not being able to afford to rent. Plus, the interest rates are, of course, affecting the people who have bought houses on buy-to-let mortgages. They will start selling up, and that will cause problems for tenants. So it's not just a financial problem, it's a sort of home problem. It's a home. I mean, we don't have enough homes in Britain as it is, and places to rent and places to buy are too expensive. That could get a lot worse.
Yeah, Kevin, you hear older homeowners talking about that period that Sarah was referencing there, where interest rates went into double digits and people were panicking overnight at how they were going to be able to afford their mortgages. Obviously, we're not seeing the same level of interest rates, but people are more exposed these days in terms of how much they borrowed. Just how do you think that could play out for people this year?
Yeah, I remember them going up from 8 to 15% very, very rapidly. And I'd got a fixed rate of 8.8%, which I managed to see it through. I was lucky, but I remember people having to take in lodgers. But people just didn't have any other life because all they could do was pay their mortgage. But at the time, the ratio between your wages and your mortgage was a lot lower. Now, because house prices have been inflated for so long and have risen so quickly, people have got much bigger mortgages, so they'll be hit even harder. Although it won't be 15%, you get 5 and 6%, that will proportionately be much harder on them. There'll be some people sitting on paid off their mortgages. They may be able to ride it out. Their asset will just possibly go down a little bit, but there are just people. Some people have to sell and downsize in a crisis, so they won't get a good price. Other people are just going to see their family finances absolutely wrecked. They won't be able to eat out, buy clothes, go to events, holiday, get new cars, and that is where the Eye pick up on this threat of recession, because the government says high inflation is a big threat to your living standards. Absolutely is. But at the same time, if the way to cure inflation is to actually attack your living standards in another direction by pushing up not just the cost of your mortgage, but anything you've got on a credit card or anything else you've borrowed, maybe bought that car, then you're going to get hammered in another direction. And of course, the big push for inflation came from exterior forces, Putin's invasion of Ukraine, sending oil and gas prices soaring, which fed through into food too. And Britain has got a particular problem because we import so much. So we got higher inflation than the other G7 major economies. But if the way of getting that inflation down, which has been pushed up mainly by external factors, is to hammer you at home with interest rates, then it just seems crazy. People are going to get slapped from two different directions, and the economy can be crashed. Not much of a cure, is it, if you're going to crash the economy?
And certainly, Sarah, that lever that we're going to see the Bank of England probably pulling again tomorrow in terms of raising interest rates just doesn't seem to be working. And this argument that it's a global problem doesn't really necessarily ring true anymore when you look at inflation here in the UK, which appears stuck at more than 8%, and then you look elsewhere, China, where it's virtually non-existent, the US is at 4%, Europe at 6%. And certainly the front page of your paper tomorrow is looking at the fact that some Tories are turning on the Bank of England over this crisis.
Yes, well, of course, now the blame game starts. And, the Conservatives are blaming Bank of England. Keir Starmer is obviously going to make a lot of hay with this, and politically it makes perfect sense for him to do so. Although I'm not sure that Labour has any particular alternative. It's going to be one of those situations where everyone just blames everybody else. Meanwhile, ordinary people suffer. And also the other thing to say is that I suppose back then in the 90s, people had more savings because, as Kevin was saying, cost of living was lower, you could put more money away, you were paying a smaller proportion of your salary towards your living costs. Now people live on debt, they borrow a lot of. Everybody has borrowed far too much in the last sort of 10 or 20 years. And so people don't have much of a cushion. And I think that's really going to hit, it's going to cost the Conservatives very dear electorally, I think.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to potentially be costly for them politically, but people are far more worried about how much it's going to cost them financially. The front page of The Guardian, Kevin, is looking at Labour's calls for mortgage support, but certainly that's something the government has ruled out. They're not going to offer financial intervention for mortgage holders because they say it'll be inflationary.
No, absolutely, and expensive, they say. But Rachel Reeves, the shadow Treasury Secretary, Labour's Chancellor-in-Waiting, really, is calling for help. One of the proposals is to extend mortgage repayment periods. Well, that works if you're paying largely capital off. But if you're in the early part of your mortgage, almost all the money you go, say you've got a 25-year mortgage, goes on interest. And you can pay a lot each month, and all you really actually buy is a couple of bricks. I remember watching my own mortgage fall very, very slowly at the start because most of the money was on the interest and it wasn't on the capital. So this can only bail you out to some extent, and only some people. I mean, the truth is there is no easy answer. The Metro pick up on renters. Two, it's not just people with mortgages. 21 months, the rents increases have outstripped inflation generally, and they reckon now, if you're outside London, the average renter, we mustn't forget, the government is in serious trouble when it's got homeowners or home buyers and it's got renters both coming at it. Outside of London, the average rent now is £1,136 a month. And in London, more than £2,000. More than £2,000 is £24,000 a year. That's £24,000 cash. That's after tax and national insurance. So you'd be talking around getting on for £30,000 a year. You would have to be earning gross just to pay your rent. So Labour, I suppose, and the Liberal Democrats and others in opposition have got proposals, but I'm not sure they will fundamentally address a problem, which is rents are far too high And now people are going to be absolutely crucified by rising mortgages.
Yeah, it is certainly such a worrying time for so many people. Kevin, Sarah, thanks so much. We'll see you again in just a sec. More of the front pages coming up after this break, including this front page of the Telegraph. Titanic sub-operator too slow to raise the alarm. Certainly time is running out in that rescue operation. We'll be talking about that after this short break.
Then I think that the central point was we were writing in the book, and which was essentially a collection of interviews with the men and women who had come on that boat and still survived, and some of their descendants. And when we were writing that, we were writing the origin story for what was then Black Britain. And Black Britain basically meant people like me with two Black Caribbean parents. And the reason that we were keen to write the story is because up until that point, what people knew about us was what they, generally speaking, saw in the media, which was either Black people rioting or Black people dancing at Carnival. And we wanted to say there was much more to us than that. And these guys they'd fought in the war, many of them in the RAF, and they were adventurous, they were talented, they were ambitious young people. We wanted to tell that story. Now, what's different now is that that group of people, to which I belong, are really a minority within the minority. They are our children, nearly 1 million of them, who have a Caribbean parent, but also have a white British parent. And then even a bigger group, those who have come by what I call the direct route from Africa, about 1.5 million, who are people who have arrived in the last 20 years or so from East and West Africa. And that's changed the tone and the nature and I think the sentiment of Black Britain quite dramatically. And that's really what we've added to the book, description of those changes. I think when we wrote this book, the original book, it was still slightly the sense that we were foreigners, and it's a bit of a surprise that we were still here. Whereas today, you can't imagine Britain without some of the people that are the descendants of that group. And we're talking about, sporting stars like Rio Ferdinand or entertainers like Leona Lewis. You can't imagine Britain without those people. What we're really seeing now, when we think about British identity, is that both the people who came and their descendants can't imagine being anywhere else.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview on Sky News. It's good to have you with us. And with me this evening is the associate editor at the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail columnist, Sarah Vine. And of course, the other big story on so many of the front pages, once again tomorrow, Kevin, is this missing submersible with 5 people on board, missing since Sunday, and certainly time is running out.
No, absolutely. With the oxygen, as you were saying, some papers say 11, others say 12 noon. Sounds are being picked up, but they don't even know where it is. Never mind trying to get it up. So while you always hope for the best, I think now it's a case of fearing the worst. and there'll be lots of questions asked. I have picked up, I was slightly surprised, but some people are not too sympathetic to the group, believing they spent a lot of money on tourism and it was incredibly dangerous and they should have gone. And there are other arguments about why do these 5 get so much coverage and other bigger disasters, possibly including 750 people on a ship in the Mediterranean that went down. Why don't they get as much coverage? But you just kind of see the drama of it, but you also the heartbreak of the families knowing that these 5 people are trapped in this fight against time that isn't on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't really bear thinking about, but it certainly has captured the attention of the world, Sarah. And I was speaking to someone earlier who was on for an interview who used to be in the US Navy, and he said that even if the worst case scenario is if they found them at this stage on the seabed, they don't actually have the equipment yet in place to pull them up. And certainly there's already criticism in the Telegraph in an article on page 1 tomorrow that they were too slow to raise the alarm here in this rescue operation.
Yes, I mean, the thing is, even if they, as you say, even if they get to them, because the thing is sealed with 17 bolts or something, they can't even get more oxygen in. And of course, they can't raise them up quick enough to open it up. So it's a very sad and difficult situation. It's an odd thing. I can't understand why anybody would want to do something like that, let alone spend £250,000 doing it. But we've sent fewer people to the bottom of the ocean than we have into outer space. It's a very, very hostile environment, and there have been concerns raised about this operation before. I think the reason it's captured the imagination so much is because it is a race against time, isn't it, to try and get them out. And of course, the Titanic is a sort of eternally fascinating sea wreck. But I just, it seems very sad. I feel terrible for their families.
Yeah, absolutely. But certainly the message is loud and clear. They are not giving up hope at this stage. For as long as there is time left, then there's hope, but it's estimated there could be as little as 14 hours of oxygen left. It doesn't bear thinking about. Kevin, Sarah, thanks so much. We'll see you again next hour. Let's have a quick look at how your weather's shaping up now.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, there'll be sunny spells and widespread showers tomorrow, but the south and east look mainly dry for the weekend. Most places will have a dry and sunny start, but there will be a few showers, mainly near northern and southwestern coasts. There'll be some mist and fog too, with the south and west most at risk. That mist and fog will clear to leave sunshine and a scattering of showers during the morning. But Scotland, southeast England and northern parts of both Ireland and Northern Ireland will stay mainly dry. Top temperatures will be mostly like today's, but the southeast looks like being a couple of degrees warmer. The afternoon will bring little change, although the showers will become fairly isolated towards the evening. And the far west of Ireland will see cloud and outbreaks of rain moving in later on.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.